It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Excuse me. Taxi. Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the Vice Chair of the New York State Republican Party and the County Chair of the Suffolk County Party. With us is noted attorney, commentator, and essayist, our good friend and co-host, Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg, and I am absolutely delighted to have as our special guest Dr. Walid Phares. Dr. Phares is a PhD. He's also a lawyer. He's originally from Lebanon. He's a Lebanese Christian. He had firsthand experience in the politics and the civil war in Lebanon. He's written approximately 15 books, some of which specifically deal, and articles specifically deal with the problem of Iran, the problem of worldwide jihadism, the Islamist threat to Western civilization. He was an advisor to Governor Mitt Romney in a presidential campaign, as well as Donald Trump in his first presidential campaign, and he's often on television and radio. Dr. Phares, we're honored and privileged to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Honor is mine. Thank you so much, Judge, for having me and for your guests as well, and your co-experts.
All right. Eric, would you start the conversation with Dr. Phares, please?
Absolutely. Dr. Phares, welcome, and thank you for joining us. So,
thank you for having me.
So as we're watching or as we're reading what's going on in the media, if we watch the American press or the European press, the coverage seems to range from we're losing to they're rooting for us to lose, which I find quite remarkable. Mm-hmm. And yet there was an article in Al Jazeera on March 16th of this year, written by Muhannad Saloom, in which he points out, now, of course, for people who don't know, Al Jazeera is basically the voice of Qatar. Nothing can be published there unless Qatar supports this, in which he writes that America and Israel are winning. It's the right strategy. It will lead to regime change, and we should stay the course. Who's right?
Actually, that version, which is not just Al Jazeera, because, they speak on behalf of Qatar, have an interest and are committed to the weakening of the Islamic regime in Iran. But that's also the view of many, many media inside Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, as we just mentioned, Kuwait, and a lot of segments of the Middle East civil societies also have an interest to see that the Iranian people, at the end of the day, the one that lost 50,000 people, victims of the militias of the regime, they're all rooting for the same direction. This regime has been responsible not just for actions and terrorism against the United States. We start in, the hostage situation back in '79, and also the Marine barracks attack. Our soldiers and military have been killed in Iraq for a number of years. That is the American interest, but there are also all these civil societies, starting with the Iranians, but how many people have been killed by Hezbollah, by the Assad regime, by the Houthis down in Yemen, and of course the Hashid militias in Iraq. So there is quite of a consensus, even among people who do not like each other's policies, that this regime has crossed all the red lines, that the actions taken by President Trump and his administration and by Congress are the right thing to do. And on top of all of this, they are winning. I mean, this whole coalition is winning. You don't need to be a political scientist to figure out that the Navy, the Khomeinist or the Islamic regime Navy, is gone. There are few dinghies who are still, shooting, but this is going to be over. There is no more, Iranian Air Force. There are still some drones and a few ballistic that they kept for the last. I compare this a little bit to when the Nazis, at the end of 44, early 45, kept firing V1s and V2s to London, whereby the Allies were winning the war. So in my view, yes, we are winning. There are 2 points, and I quickly stop here. We need an ally inside Iran, because at the end of the day, if we're not committed to put troops, and that's the consensus of Americans, we need to have our de Gaulles. We need to have our Iranian Free Army on the inside. And to do that, we need to find and work with a transition government made of the main opposition forces, not just in the diaspora, but also inside Iran. And we are starting to identifying them. These are the facts. But of course, the opposition, the left wing and Islamist opposition, are not very happy with it.
Yeah, you talked about the 50,000 people that this government has killed, and just today they hanged, just to talk about how despicable this regime is. Yeah. A 19-year-old wrestler, Saleh Mohammadi, simply because he spoke out against the regime. But in terms of the uprising, yeah, there is no support in the United States for putting boots on the ground to overthrow the Iranian government, although I believe there's a tremendous amount of support for the Iranian government to be overthrown. And I think in watching what's been unfolding in Iran, it's pretty clear to even the most casual observer, that between and among the United States, Israel, and probably Azerbaijan, we've been able to infiltrate the highest levels of the Iranian government. That's the only way we could have this kind of level of intelligence. So I'd like to think that maybe some of these people who have been providing this information and this intelligence to us, that they are prepared to turn on the regime, and that I'd also like to think that in terms of identifying leadership in provinces around Iran, that the United States, the CIA, Mossad are currently on the ground talking to these people, telling them when this bombing starts, this is where you pick up the weapons, and this is what you do and where you go. Do you have any insights as to whether or not that is happening?
We have a lot of input, so let me just draw very quickly what I believe is the equation. First of all, you have the marginal areas. Of course, everybody knows that in Iranian Kurdistan, the 5 major political parties have united, and their national guards, let's call them national guards, have also united. What they're going to do and deliver once the allies, Israel and the United States, will start pounding the militias' positions in that area, and they've done a great job so far. The Iranian Kurds, I'm not talking about Iraqi Kurds or Syrian Kurds, the Iranian Kurds, some of whom have had long-term relationship with our agencies, with the Israelis, and with others. They will advance and take over the governmental buildings. That's what the president has encouraged all Iranians to do. If you remember the first few posts, I was privy to, one of them, the first one, or the second one, when he told the Iranians, number 1, continue to demonstrate, number 2, seize the institutions, seizing the institution. Number 3, identify. And you just mentioned right now the assassination or the killing of this young man. What I've heard just before I entered to this interview is that the Israelis are now targeting, guess what, judges who have ordered these criminal activities. So there is a plan to weaken the entire system, to allow, at least let's start with 3 regions, if not more, Kurdistan, Ahwaz. Ahwaz is the Arab-speaking province, very rich in oil, that is at the border of Iraq and eventually ends in Kuwait. That area also soon will rise. On the other side of Iran, in the eastern side, the Baluchistan, probably one of the largest after Azerbaijan of Iran, there are activities. The rest of these provinces will have to wait for a multi-city uprising, which would happen at any time once the Israelis and the U.S. will finish off the heavy weaponry system. And as I said, the U.S. is doing the heavy lifting. The Israelis are doing the specific kind of actions, such as sending drones. Armies of Israeli drones, or probably backed by Israel, have been targeting the Basij. I call the Basij the lower militia, the larger militia, 300,000. And in comparison, I am calling it the lower SS, meaning what is protecting the regime now are two militias. The IRGC are the upper SS, and the Basij are the lower SS. So yes, I conclude with you that there is a work now to weaken these positions of the regime, these militias, and at one point, both the marginal ethnic groups, minorities, around Iran will rise, and a major multi-city uprising will rise. The only missing link is to equip, let's say, to arm those cadres inside those cities. But what I have detected very quickly is that a large number of people who have served in the Basij, who have served in the IRGC, and in the regular army, which is called Artesh. It's not that well equipped, but in urban fighting, you don't need nuclear weapons. You need just AK-47s and some of the likes, RPGs. So everything is heading towards a final clash where the Iranians will have to, rise and then seize the buildings.
So I just have one more question before we turn it over to Jesse. So the Straits of Hormuz, which the Iranians have closed, obviously for them it's a form of economic suicide because their entire economy functions and revolves around oil, and 90% of it or more is exported off of Cargo Island and through the Straits. And that my sense is that they're gambling in by saying we can absorb more pain for a longer period of time than you can in the West. You weaklings, you can't deal with the economic pain. So my first question is, do you think that's the thought process? And the follow-up question is, how close are we to reopening the Straits?
Well, number one, let's all remember that the state of mind of this elite still ruling the Islamic regime in Iran, they are disoriented. I mean, imagine their leader, the supreme leader who ruled since the death of Khomeini, the founder, has been taken out. To absorb that matter alone is a big deal. Second, many of their commanders, including the commander of the Basij, that's the militia I was talking about. Yes, there are people who are being selected to replace them, but there is a cohesiveness problem inside the regime. That's number one. Number two, yes, the cadre, because they have a lot of ideological cadre, are saying all we have to do is to gain time, wait, we absorb our losses. It's going to be economically bad to us. It's better than us not being in charge. You know what I mean? So if our advice economically to them is, well, over months and over years, you're going to be having to absorb all these economic losses, they will tell us, yeah, but if we don't do this, basically, we won't be here to absorb any losses. That's their logic. It's kind of a suicidal in a sense. But with regard to the Hormuz Strait, it's very simple. As long as they have any type of weapons, they don't have the heavy ones. The cruisers are gone, the destroyers are gone. They have those dinghies, the speedboats, and they have the army of drones. But they are depleted. I mean, with the hyper force that we are applying, especially, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth is applying everything we have, and we are replacing them very quickly. It's a matter of time. Should it be weeks, couple months, they will cease fighting because they won't have any more weapons and ammunition, and then they have to retreat to the inside of the country. And I have an opinion on what they're going to try to do. So Hormuz is not going to be a type of a World War I standoff. No, because those drones and those rockets and those are coming from the coast opposed to the strait. And I think the U.S. and Israel will be dealing with that coast. So there is a race between us as an alliance reducing the weapons that can target the ships in the strait, or the Iranian resistance arriving to the beaches on the other side. And that will be the end of the crisis. And when the end of the crisis is on, then everything should be floating back up, economically speaking. So this is not something that is going to cause a permanent economic crisis internationally. It's a tunnel, and the president spoke about it. We have to cross, the Iranian people will have to cross, and on the other side, there will be no more regime.
Jesse, we have a few minutes left to ask your question to Dr. Phares, please, and I'll have to pass on my chance, but we have to bring Dr. Phares back. But Jesse, go ahead, please.
Dr. Phares, thank you for being here, and I truly appreciate it. I want to bring it a little bit closer to home because you've spoken before Congress and some of your key publications like The War of Ideas, Jihadism Against Democracy. Mm-hmm. What do you point to in Europe and here in the United States that the explosion of Islamic extremism, what is the cause of that, and what feckless acts from governments have allowed for this to occur and basically try to wipe out or replace Western society or the European culture, especially in Europe?
I have been working on this. I mean, that was my career. Since I emigrated to this beautiful country in 1991, technically, all my work as a professor, academician, briefing governments, working with Homeland Security, with the FBI in terms of the strategies, multiple administrations, not all of them, but multiple, is to find out what is happening inside our homeland. And there is a consensus among the experts who look into that direction that there are two long arms that have penetrated the United States over the past couple decades. And some would say that the Muslim Brotherhood, the Salafis, the other type of jihadists have been here longer than the Khomeinist Iranian, meaning type of networks. And very quickly, I would say, already after the end of the Cold War, the Brotherhood, jihadists, bin Laden, etc., have penetrated with some petrodollar money, and they have embedded themselves in our society, not just as a terrorist organizations, but as a social, political organizations. It's only now that the American public, in many states, New York, Texas, other places, they start to see them because they have decided to move out of the shadow and to grab as much as they can, political influence. At the same time, cells have been forming. When it comes to the Islamic Republic of Iran, they have been funding directly the formation, not just of Hezbollah, but other cells that are linked to the Islamic regime inside the United States. So let me put it in a very general way. There is a demography of jihadists in the United States that is very different from when I came here in 1990, 1991. It has multiplied by 10, if not 20. But in the last few years, unfortunately, probably the last 4 years of the Obama administration, the 4 years of the Biden administration, and I'm not talking politics here, just national security, they have accepted that the demography of jihadists will grow much larger for their ideological reasons, and they have opened the border. Not all jihadists came from the border, but 80% of them, they came through Mexico, especially in the last 4 years, so under the Biden administration. And they have constituted in our cities an urban force, some of which we can see in those incidents that we hear about. But actually, we have an open force, which is called the Intifada, the globalized the Intifada movement, which is on campuses elsewhere. And if you look at the numbers, we're talking about 100,000 of people. From those, you have cells, jihadist cells, and we have seen so many incidents so far. And the problem now, we have to be very attentive to what the remnant of the regime, the Islamic regime in Iran, may order them and to strike. Fortunately, and I finish here, fortunately, the administration shut down that border in general terms last year. Imagine if that border was not shut down and we are in an open conflict and the globalized the Intifada movement was operational. It would have been a nightmare. It is still a problem, and our Homeland Security, FBI, national security, everybody, our local communities are all working together. But the threat is very high because these are not battlefronts in Iran or in Syria or in Yemen. This is inside our own home country, and then that's a very difficult and delicate matter.
Well, Dr. Phares, on behalf of Jesse Garcia, Eric Levine, and myself, it's a delight having you with us. I look forward to bringing you back. I believe that this is a fight we have to fight. This is a fight that we have to win, that Western civilization is dependent on it. Your expertise in assisting the United States and Israel and our allies in fighting against this cancer of Islamist extremism is absolutely essential. And we'd love to have you back in the coming weeks as this situation and this story continues. So we want to thank you for being here with us today on Let the Record Show. We wish you every Godspeed. Good luck at your meeting at the State Department, your testimony before Congress. And I can't tell you how happy I am to have had you here today. And I look forward to speaking with you directly the next time you're on Let the Record Show. Thank you again, Dr. Phares.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you all, gentlemen. And I'll be more than happy to come back and continue the conversation.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
This has been the first segment of Let the Record Show. We've been honored and privileged to have Dr. Walid Phares as our honored guest, the great expert on Islamist terrorism, Iran, the Middle East, what America needs to do to protect itself against this cancer of extremism. We'll be back in but a few moments with more important and interesting conversation in our second segment of today's Let the Record Show. Please stay tuned.